Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me the gorgeous Jordana. Jordana is a somatic movement coach. She works with people to recalibrate their nervous system so they can create safety and containment in their bodies in order to serve the health, pleasure, and longevity of their relationships and love and their sex lives. The methodology she uses is the 5 personality pattern map of energy, often held in contracted segments, aka emotional blocks, that need to be released via movement. Welcome to the show, Jordana.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm always excited to talk to you.
I know. I absolutely love talking to you as well. And what we've created together over the past, I don't even know how long we've known each other.
It's at least a year.
It feels
maybe
like
more. I mean, definitely lifetimes.
Yeah, lifetimes. Yeah.
When we met and we were like, felt like we'd known each other forever. It really did. And then we had weird things in common. It was like, wow. Okay, wow. And there was a bunch of things when we first started talking. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Here we are today. And absolutely have loved having you in my life. And every time I talk to you, you're just such a beautiful ball of energy and wealth of knowledge. And I'm so, so grateful to have you here today. And especially even to talk about the nervous system, because it is, again, something that I am so passionate about. And I'm glad that we have this same passion.
We do. We're always aligned consistently. Yeah.
So do you want to share a little bit about your story and kind of how you came to where you are today?
Sure. I'll try to be organized and not jump around too much. But when I first started, before I started trying to get pregnant, a few years before that, I had sort of fallen ill with chronic fatigue. So I was a workaholic, and that was sort of the patterning of my life, was just to work until I collapsed. And it didn't seem wrong to me because I was young. And then I met Tom, who's my co-parent. We're no longer together, but we still co-parent our daughter together. And when we met, we knew we were going to have kids, and we just sort of stopped using contraception. But I'd sort of gotten myself out of chronic fatigue at that point. And then when I was 39 or so, we started trying to get pregnant. And then I think we started seeing someone around then too, because it seemed like we'd been together a while. We'd been not using protection and nothing had happened. I started getting pregnant right away and losing. So from 39 to 44, I had 6 pregnancies, 6 losses. And then my final 7th pregnancy was Una. They were all super short. Some of them were from IVF. I think 2 were from IVF and the rest were natural. My situation was always my immune system, but it really took being in fertility treatment and noticing these short pregnancies to really look at what could possibly be going on. And it's such a mysterious thing to have an elevated immune system that, when you do the high NK cell kind of chat groups, it's its own thing. It's its own world of weirdness. Like, how does this even happen to someone? And nobody really had faith that we would ever get pregnant because it was so mysterious. And it was already 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, because Una's 9. So what happened? I had all those losses, and they also brought me to a point in my life that I thought I was going to die. I was so brokenhearted. I didn't want to live. I mean, I really didn't see the point. I thought God had forsaken me. And I didn't even know I believed in God at that point. I just felt forgotten and ruined, like bad material. there's a whole other story attached to this, but basically what happened was we took this 3 months to kind of do nothing but try to get pregnant. I stopped working. I just like focused on chilling out and relaxing. And because of the relief of what had happened, during right before those 3 months, this lawsuit that had been going on, it was like suddenly I was hopeful again. And I really changed my nervous system and I got pregnant with Una. I didn't know I was doing that at the time, but that's basically what happened. And so then I kind of retraced my steps once I was pregnant and sort of had this new kind of lifestyle. Energetically, I had a new lifestyle. I started researching what I had done differently and why it had actually finally resulted in a conception and a full term pregnancy. So that's basically my story. Like that's the trajectory of it. But there was a lot of drama, in there. And I didn't even know what ventral was. We talk about a ventral state, rest and digest, your calmest place in you. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what that was. And when I finally had her and I got to have this bliss and nurse her and feel all the goodness of that and feeling whole and complete in myself, the bliss of that, I knew this was something I wanted to like help other people with. It's sort of my secret love to help people who are trying to get pregnant. It's like I help a lot of different kinds of people to find like pleasure back in their lives and their sex lives and their relationship. But anyone who's gone through fertility treatments has a special place in my heart. Like for me, I understand in such a deep way.
I was agreeing a lot of like your story sort of at the beginning stages sounded a lot like mine. Like we were trying to conceive for 5 years and
Same, yeah.
Ended up seeing like, again, we weren't on contraception. We weren't using protection. We're like, this is going to happen. And it just didn't. And we're just like, why? And at the end of it, I felt so broken as well. I'm like, I don't understand. I am such a failure as a woman. Like it's my body's job. Like why can't it do it? And then we had our loss. And then after we had our successful pregnancy after loss, I retraced my steps as well. I was like, I didn't actually know what specifically I was doing for my body at the time. But when I look back over it with the knowledge that I have now, I was like, holy hell, that's what I was doing for myself as well. I was supplying my body with that. And like you said, you talk about the ventral vagal and you're like, what is that? Like, how do I get to that? And for yourself and myself, like it was just that place that we created for ourselves without really even knowing. And, even eating for our nervous system, like I changed my diet unknowingly, supporting my nervous system. I shifted my lifestyle. I shifted my mindset, unknowingly supporting my nervous system. And that's why I have that passion for it now, and you do as well, because we know our nervous system is what drives our body. It's in the driver's seat, and we don't give our nervous system that much acknowledgement, attention.
And even now that it's so trendy to talk about, people talk about it very technically, and you can't talk yourself in and out of the nervous system. It's driving the ship from a bodily perspective that if you don't do the somatic work like I know you do, and I go really deep into the patterning, like with actual body movement coaching, if you don't go at it that way, you can't actually change the pattern. Because what is ventral vagal? You might not even know what it is. And even though they could measure it and say to you, oh, you're at rest and digest right now, technically. Somebody who's raised in a really crazy, chaotic house might have a level of ventral vagal that is totally amped compared to mine. Everyone's place where they rest and digest is going to be different. And we don't even talk about that in the scientific kind of data that we talk about the nervous system. So it's also very emotional, and nobody, it's very rare that it's talked about. Like even now with all the people talking about it, they're still talking about like, this means you're in fight. This means you're in fight. Very technical, then we go up the ladder. And yes, I do believe in the polyvagal theory. I do. And I use that. It's also just, these patterns are so psycho emotional, unconscious. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, it's one thing to think about it. It's another thing to actually feel what it's like inside of you, inside of your body. And this is what you specialize in. This is those somatic sensations and the way that you can process what's actually happening. So yeah, feel free to go into, dive into that nervous system element now.
Yes. Okay. So basically, the personality pattern work came from Wilhelm Reich, right? He was the first somatic therapist, psychiatrist, who discovered that the patterns were held in the body and the tissues. The issues are in the tissues. Peter Levine, who's the work we know we're most familiar with, owes his legacy to Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich is who the personality patterns, as he discovered them, address and really explain the nervous system. But at the time they were discovered, there was no data on the nervous system. So what's so beautiful is that each pattern that comes in order of the stages of development in childhood, infancy to like child. So from 0 to 6 years old. Each one of those phases is a nervous system state as well. So each personality pattern holds a nervous system state as it's developing, as it's needed. So the reason dissociation comes in the earliest is because we couldn't walk, see, hear, talk. So that's why it comes in, because there's no way to run. There's no way to fight. There's no way, right? All those states come in as we learn physically those tasks. So this is what is sort of my take on this that is very unusual, unique to me, and why I feel like we have just begun to understand why the nervous system states come in. We've just begun to learn about ancestral trauma. We've just begun to learn about all of this. And so, yeah, in terms of pregnancy loss, I want to say that I look at it as like a childhood fantasy. And I watch my daughter play mom and talk about the kids she wants to have and how that's embedding in her psyche, and how if she couldn't have a child, or if she lost one, got pregnant and lost, how that would feel like her little girl got stomped on and crushed. Like my little girl, Una, would be devastated. The other connection that I make to the nervous system that I think is unusual is that your inner children are your nervous system. So, right. So the things that scared her are the things that scare you and scare your body. And so when you're in a nervous system defense altered state, basically, you can't talk your way. It's like you can't talk to that little girl. She's frozen in time. You have to move it through the body and just let the body know you're there and do things, do the movements, and take it up through the ladder so you can actually take the heart rate up enough that it'll come down and rest and come back to ventral. Yeah. I'm wondering if there's anything else to add to that. Was that clear? Part about the inner children? I think it's so interesting.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with that as well, because there is so much of my nervous system that reacts today that takes me back to me being a child, me feeling unsafe in an environment in like school or, early stages of like primary school, of, life as me at, a young age.
Yeah.
And as much as it's funny now having this awareness, because, you can't talk yourself out of it. There's no way to say, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm okay.
I know.
And
I know.
There's
no way.
You can't do it. And we bring this, it's funny, it wasn't until my loss that I became aware of how my body was reacting. It was almost like my loss was the catalyst for me to go, okay, something's happening internally. I don't know what it is, but I need to figure it out.
Yeah, I would say the same.
Yeah. And that's where I do absolutely 100% believe we carry these childhood states with us and into adulthood. And then when we go into these nervous system responses, it goes back to that place where your child first felt that experience, first felt unsafe, and then but she had no idea how to process that. So that emotion, that feeling, that sensation was trapped. It became frozen. And I love that you use these personality patterns to almost support and identify and support your nervous system at that level, because how else do you meet that person in that state?
That's
because
right.
you can't mentally do it.
No, and I think people want to. They keep talking about it like, oh, just do this to yourself, do these regulating exercises, and they talk about it. So technically, now you're in freeze. Now you're in this. Doesn't matter if you know. It doesn't matter. It's your limbic brain. It's going to keep going in anxiety or in freeze, holding and squeezing and keeping your eyes looking around. Like you're going to be in that conserved energy and depression, repressed anger. And actually, there's emotional components that they don't understand because of the way medicine looks at the nervous system. So the way we understand the nervous system is through medicine. So I want to say thank you, medicine, for doing that research. And because they look at things a certain way, they don't actually associate it with these childhood defense strategies. So, for example, the most interesting, I think, and the most clear cut is masochism, which comes in at the anal phase, is the freeze state. And we freeze at the throat, we freeze at the rectum. That's freeze. You're conserving your energy, you're holding. It comes in because the child is over penetrated. That's why the child is scared. It comes in during this phase of development. It's like 2 to 4 years old. And if the parents are punishing and forceful, even if they're not, the phase is going to happen. But if they are, if the parents have large expectations and demands, the child wants to say no, but it can't. And then it suppresses its own energy because it knows it's not going to get the parent to let it be free and be willful. It sublimates its own will. And that causes the physical pattern. I mean, it's so incredible that this guy, this doctor discovered masochism, describes it perfectly from the emotional standpoint of why it would come in. And consistently, people who are in freeze as their primary nervous system state, their primary pattern, I can read them and tell them what their parents were like. And I've never been wrong. That's crazy because he did this and discovered this before we knew the data on freeze and how it works physically. And yet it's exactly why it comes in. It's a lot of repressed anger in freeze. And one of the ways to move it is to charge the body with energy so that electricity moves, so you can move yourself out of that frozen state. Isn't that incredible?
It makes so much sense too, because our nervous system is designed to keep us safe. So it goes into that primitive reptilian part of our brain goes, I'm in danger. I need to keep safe. And like you said, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a life-threatening moment, but as a child, your needs aren't being met or you're feeling unsafe. So you kind of go into that state. And
it's what level? Like the parents might just be doing the parents. They might just be very kind and just a little bit, because I have a lot of masochism and I was never over penetrated or bossed around particularly, but I have a lot of masochism. It depends why, but that's everyone has it, is my point. Is like everyone has, and we need it. Like we all develop in a certain way and we all get to have each nervous system state. It's just, where are you stuck in the polyvagal ladder that you might not be able to have things in your life that you want because of where you're stuck. That's really the magic of this work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see that.
It's interesting because, like you said, you've got masochism. I often at times bounce between freeze and fight or flight.
Okay. I would think you'd be more dissociative, more early. No?
That's interesting.
Are you projector?
Yes.
You projector? I'm trying to remember which one it is because I think there's ways to look at the human design too, to connect to the patterns a little bit.
Yeah. I haven't turned the lens on myself so much in terms of actually being able to label myself, but in terms of a feeling, I go through a real anxious state and then I will go into freeze where I can't even swallow. I feel like I can't move. I feel like...
No, that's where you go then. Yeah.
So I'll go from anxious, my heart rate is up. I'm just
that's
oh my gosh.
You're right.
And then I go into freeze where I'm just like, I can't talk. I can't swallow. I can't move. I don't want to have this confrontation like with this person, and I'll shut down. Like my body just shuts down. So
then you're right. That is those two. That's your loop right there. Yeah.
It's a loop that I've done the work in terms of understanding the nervous system, understanding polyvagal. I can I can sort of pinpoint where I am. It's funny, I've not actually worked with someone, say like yourself, in terms of going, okay, really deep into the patterns of my body.
Yeah.
But it's funny that is something that I picked up when I was a child. It's something that I've gone through and noticed in my loss. And then it's now something that I continue to keep noticing now. And that's also something that I feel like there's this, like, I don't know, it feels like when you go through a big life challenge, like, for example, pregnancy loss, we feel like, oh, well, we've just developed this response right now in this moment, but it's not. It's something that we have created years prior, and it's coming out as an adult. So acknowledging the nervous system, acknowledging the patterns, acknowledging these childhood wounds, so that you can support yourself now as an adult, support yourself through the grief, through the challenge, through the trauma. It's a very, very important part. And like you said, it comes up in other areas of our life. Like there's things that, like when I was introducing you about, and we've spoke about this before, about sex.
Yeah.
I have issues with, sex. And so even after even after pregnancy loss, you can go through.
That's related to free, because it's right at the root where it squeezes and holds. Keep going.
Yeah. We can obviously, going through pregnancy loss, you can have these attachments to sex, to the trauma. But obviously this goes back further. I don't know where my first thing was with the words and the notion of sex, but it has, we're talking about in terms of money as well, like the connection to money and relationships, money and sex, money and how we feel when we talk about sex and relationships is the same relationship we have with money. So if I'm feeling restricted and frozen when I talk about sex, that's all talking about sex is almost like I can almost feel a block in my throat. So that's the same restriction that I'm going to have when I talk about money, when I want to receive money into my life, so like you said, it has this ripple effect through our life. And I can absolutely connect sex to money and the nervous system response, my nervous system
100%.
response.
And your throat cells, this, are the same cells as the vagina, the actual vagina and the cavity. It's the same cells as your throat. So when you're in fetus, those cells develop at the same time and then literally spread apart. One becomes the throat, one becomes the vaginal canal. So of course, if your root is squeezing, your throat has an automatic response and vice versa. And if that's where you go and you hold here in the root too, and you're scared, you're constricting your sexual energy, your chi, your life force energy. And that will affect how you experience sex technically, and just how much electricity gets to move. It restricts it completely because the body's conserving energy. It doesn't want energy to move. It's holding energy back. That's what breathing is doing. So it's not hooey for real makes technical sense to me.
One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a loss mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Yeah. And it's funny, and it's again, in a medical journal, you're not going to see them talking about your nervous system in terms of how we experience other things in our life. And that's including, sex, and it's including being able to talk about it and having the energy for it and passion. And you see real people talking about money and sex, but being real sexual about talking about money. And I'm like, ew.
No, it's so much more energetic. What you described is beautiful and perfect because you can feel your body constrict when you talk about sex, almost like it's not allowed. And so your body goes into that fear posture. Your fellow Australian, I think her name is Jessica, who talks about the nervous system. I think you follow her. I follow her on Instagram. She talks about neuroception a lot and the body posturing, which is the closest anyone I know gets to what I'm talking about. But that posture stops the sexual energy from moving. It stops energy flow in the sex. And there's actually a ton of data on this that you might want to look at, or your listeners might want to look at, in a book called Vagina by Naomi Wolf. She has a chapter called The Traumatized Vagina, where she's talking to healers and doctors. And one guy that works at Harvard, he's doing research at Harvard, that the freeze state holds in the vagina, and that women from trauma, from being attacked sexually, but also just from childhood stuff and from ancestral trauma. Not all of it is in this life. Some of it is from, their current circumstances, from some childhood. It depends, because all these different kinds of women go to him and they don't even always go with the complaint that they're feeling pain or that they're a lack of orgasm. They're not always going with that complaint, but he said it's consistent that there is pain, a lack of pleasure, a lack of movement, all of these things. And it's the freeze state in the cells holding, he calls it the freeze state in the vaginal wall. And it won't let energy move. So it hurts.
The body, it does
and
what
of course
it
that
needs
would
to
stop
do.
Conception too. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what when I talk about the nervous system inside of my courses, we can actually sort of show how the parasympathetic and the sympathetic respond to the uterus, to fertility, and what it's actually doing and how much it's actually restricting to our body when we're experiencing fertility issues. So it's a very, very powerful awareness to have in your own healing and recovery, to understand what state you're in. And you spoke about neuroception, and essentially neuroception is how our body reads our internal environment and our external environment. And a faulty neuroception is where it's unbalanced. It's reading the internal and external, and it's not calibrating it properly. It's keeping you in a threat response.
Which I would say is most people. Just on coffee, your neuroception is off, really. Because you're just you're agitated, you're in your heart. That person's trying to cut me off. No, they're not. They're just driving in front of you, dude. You know what I mean? That's how it could be subtle. But for those of us who are in fight more, my neuroception is off all the time. I think people are attacking me a lot. I have to constantly kind of look at because if my fight is always on a little bit, that's just how I grew up. So I'm always trying to look around and see what's really happening. But I tell you, I see things that are not there when it comes to my fight response.
Yeah. Wow. And it's really you also mentioned before, it's not so much that we don't want to discount any of it. Like, we do want to be able to feel it. Our
Yes.
nervous system is,
Yeah.
it's designed to feel all these responses, but it's also that neuroception is designed to bring us back to our place of calm, to bring us back into that groundedness where we feel safe. And,
Yeah.
you know, for yourself, that neuroception is recognizing, yes, I'm in this heightened state. I'm in fight. I'm in threat. How can I bring myself back? And it's having that
Yeah.
awareness of how we bring ourselves back. And it has to be through movement. It can't ever be cognitizing in our human brain going, oh, that's okay. I feel it, but I'm safe. Where your body is
I
still
had
ready
that
to.
recently. No, your body will override it. I had recently, I think when you get to your edge, your nervous system gets more alerted, right? So if you're living a life where you're growing your business, you're dating, you're whatever, new things are happening, you're traveling a lot, your body can get very triggered. Mine does. And my co-parents started dating, but I wasn't aware of it. I was very in my own world. And then something happened where I really realized all at once. And there was a job thing going on at the same time. And I had such an alert of flight where I could feel the panic attack coming kind of energy, which I've only had from internally taken things. I don't have panic attacks, but my body does respond to certain plant medicine and whatnot like that. THC does that to me. But this is what I felt. I felt pure panic and I could not calm myself down. I couldn't warm my body. And I know all the tricks. I do ice baths every day. Nothing worked. I was so angry. I was like, I teach this and I am in flight and I cannot come back. And the only thing that helped was allowing the pain to keep moving through me, the pain that was so scary to face. And then I reached out and I just had my friend talk about her divorce. It was like the shift into focusing on someone else took me to a different part of my brain unconsciously, but it had to happen from that. I mean, my consciousness was like, you can do something now. But up until that point, I had to be in pain. I screamed, I cried for hours. I mean, it was like 3 hours. And then I just called my best friend and I was like, please tell me something. Just talk to me. And she talked about her ex-husband. And, 20 minutes in, I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm done. The contact was what I needed at that point, which they say a lot in the nervous system work. But, it's very humbling. The nervous system, if you really are at an edge, it's very humbling. I think it's I felt so much grace and great gratitude after. Just like wanted to pray and praise God. Like, you're just so happy to be alive when it's over. Thank God it's over. But oh my God. So I just wanted to say that too for your listeners, because it's not like, and I am good at this. And I still was humbled. If you're on this journey, if you're trying to get pregnant or you're at an edge of anything in your business or anything where you're really stretching to understand and to grow, you get to learn all about this. You get really good at it. We all do. Not easy.
I think it's a powerful choice to make as well, to have this awareness and to have this emotional awareness, this physical awareness of your body and support it while you're going through these new challenges, these new decisions that you're having to make, stepping into this new world after loss, because a new world after loss can be freaking scary. Everything's triggering.
Yeah.
Even your body's triggering. So having this awareness is a powerful choice, and it is a choice to make. But I think it'd be one of the best choices that you can ever make for yourself, your healing and your recovery.
Especially if you don't want to go on, medication. Like, you don't want to go on antidepressants. You don't want to shove it down. If you don't want to, it's a trauma to the body. Your body's going to hold that trauma till you work with it. And even then, there are moments that come back to me where I grieve the losses. I still am grieving it. It's not every day or anything like that. And my consciousness has been years, and I have a child, so she fills me up. But there are moments where I wish I had more, or something can trigger it occasionally, not so much from the thing that, thank God, that does go away. And this is for your listeners, is once you have a child in your life, however you decide to do that, whether it comes from your own body, however, your life is full. And so the jealousy does end because you're full of love for your child. But the grief of the loss is a physical imprint.
Mm.
And I actually look at it as an initiation. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this. Maybe we have.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an absolute initiation into empowerment. Like women who go through miscarriages know something that other people don't know, that no one else knows unless you've gone through it.
Mm.
Not just having a baby, motherhood is already initiation, but any kind of giving birth to a baby that's not alive, any version of that is an initiation into like warrior goddess energy.
Mm.
Because who else could handle that but a warrior goddess, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And anyone that has been through it's like nodding. Like, yeah, we did that. We did that, you know?
I think it's a beautiful way to look at it too. Instead of feeling broken, it's a very beautiful way to look at yourself and go, okay, I am a warrior goddess. Like this is something that not everyone experiences. It's not that you ever want anyone to experience it, but
No.
instead of feeling broken, to be able to shift that perspective on yourself and empower yourself instead.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it came upon me because, I had to face other things after post loss. And I was like, none of that scares me. Whatever I was facing at that moment. And I thought, God, you know what? Like I was at a party. I'm in Austin right now. And it was kind of one of these celebrity influencer parties. And it could really send someone like me off into the ethers. Like, oh my God, I'm no one. And I was just like, they don't know what I know. But it's just a sense. It's just a feeling. I didn't mean just my losses, but there's something about it that you just go, okay. Like it's nobody can mess with me.
Yeah. It shifts your mentality. It makes you reprioritize yourself and literally give no energy to that stuff that doesn't even matter anymore. You're like, no.
Yeah, it clears it. It clears
it.
See, that's the initiation. Is you're sad you don't have the baby, but there's also a loss of bullshit. It's a loss, you lose this life, but with it goes like pettiness is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Superficiality gone.
Yeah.
Right.
So much that you would normally give your energy and attention to. You're just like, you know what? No, not anymore.
It's true. I was working with a pregnancy loss group for a while, and there's people in there that would not agree. They would be like, no, I'm holding on to this victimhood. And I just want to say to the people that if this pisses you off, that Sharna and I talk like this, talk to us, reach out, talk to Sharna, because if you're holding on to that victimhood, you don't have to. It can be something that you learned to hold with pride and to appreciate happened to you. I do. I appreciate now that it happened to me.
Mm.
Nobody wants to hear that about trauma, but that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I do.
You feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thank my angel baby for coming to me and showing me what I was capable of doing with my life, because I was putting myself into a workplace that was toxic. I was doing a lot of things that weren't right for me. And like I said before, my loss was my catalyst. It was literally my catalyst to change myself, my life, where my energy went. And I am forever grateful that, I don't know if it was a him or a her, but I'm forever grateful they came into my life. Because of them, I changed to something and now I'm doing something that is so much more fulfilling, so much more impactful. And yeah, it seems very counterintuitive to say that you're grateful for your trauma, but I am grateful for my trauma. And I'm grateful that it also taught me another layer to me as a person.
Yeah, I will totally concur. And also, I feel the same. Before my miscarriages, I was teaching yoga and I was a personal trainer and I had done all this healing work, right? I had done all this research. I had been in healing school. But then after them and after my having Una, I was like, nothing's the same anymore. Like I can't go back to that. After you have this experience, you can't go back to the way it was. And so for a couple of years there when she was little, I was like, what can I do? I didn't know. I didn't hear the call yet that I was to serve people. But I was like, there's got to be something where this all comes together and has meaning. because it just had to. And then, the fact that I serve people in this way feels completely aligned finally. And it didn't before at all. So,
No, and it didn't for me
yeah.
either. I loved being a dental nurse. I loved helping people, but underlying being a dental nurse, that's what it was. It was helping people. So I was like, I'm not meant to be in here. My soul was screaming for years before my loss. I needed to get out. I didn't know how. And the universe obviously has its way of, putting you on the right path. And I feel like the miscarriage was this huge thing that knocked me off my seat. And as I was picking myself up off the floor, I'm like, okay, this is now what I need to do. It was in my healing and recovery.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it was, I was searching for the support. So that's what I decided. I'm like, it almost to the core of me. I still get my mum, she still talks to me and she's like, I don't know if this is the right direction for you. I don't know if this is like triggering you every day. And I'm like, to the core of me, I know that this is the right direction.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, this is what I was here to do. And, and the only thing that did, put me on that path was to experience my pregnancy loss. And I, as heartbreaking as it is to experience that, it takes big life events, traumatic events to shift our perspective, to shift us out if we're open to seeing it, to hearing it and learning and asking those questions. Like, what else is there for me? Like, what else can I do? I could have stayed, well, both of us, we could have stayed stuck in that.
I feel like this is really hard for people. They're really hard when you have to really, we really relate on people, but there's so many people in this particular space who don't. And I'm just going to say, I pray that everyone who suffers a loss sees that it's an initiation into the next part of their beautiful life. And if you have trouble seeing that, reach out. Everyone deserves that. It's our birthright.
Yeah.
Yeah. And only those of us that feel like forgotten and forsaken in that way really get that. Like the healing at the other side of feeling like you've been forgotten is like the pride in knowing that everyone deserves. Everyone deserves. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's a good place to.
I was going to say, on that note,
yeah.
where can people reach out to you and find you and what you do?
They can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Jordana _ and it's JORDANACHE. I think on Facebook, I'm Jordana Toback, TOBACK. And I have a website, which is JordanaTeach.com, JORDANA teach. Yeah, but mostly all on the Instagram, I have a place where you can always sign up for my email list and hear from me regularly on all things nervous system and healing.
And I'll make sure that all of that's linked as well in the show notes so they can find you easily. I wanted to ask one question as well before we wrap up. What is one thing that you wish that you knew before experiencing pregnancy loss?
I wish I'd had a connection to my spirituality. Hold me through it. Because of how much it brings up that sense of being alone and forgotten about, unworthy. I felt like God didn't want me to be a parent, and that felt like the biggest diss I've ever. I mean, it brought me my spirituality, but I do wish that I'd had that. And also that I'd had more appreciation of my body. I think I had a lot of self-hatred. Not that caused the miscarriage, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you too on both elements.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that you wish you'd known before your loss?
That I agree with you in terms of wanting to, feeling like I wasn't being punished by God. I felt like I was punished. I felt like my body was a failure. And because I did have a lot of self-worth issues beforehand and self-esteem issues, body issues beforehand, I felt like that just fed into the pregnancy loss and the feeling of now this was proof that I was a failure. But also just to know that, when I was going through it, I felt so alone. I felt
Mm.
because there was no support, there was no one talking about it. I felt like I was literally the only person going through it. So I didn't even look for support at the time because I was like, no one's going to know what I'm talking about. No one's going to understand me. And if I do open up and talk about it, people are going to judge me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's much more talked about in common now.
Mm.
There wasn't when you had one. I had one. It was very unspoken.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I think just don't ever feel like you have to suffer in silence. Don't ever feel like that is your only option.
About anything. But yes, especially about pregnancy loss. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about it. Put your hand out, connect with someone. Because for me, that was the thing that ended up getting me out of the trenches. I ended up putting my hand up and talking to a psychologist, and just also knowing that putting your hand up for help doesn't mean it's not a sign of weakness. Like, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Mental health there's such a stigma around mental health as well. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And I think that was another thing too, like to admit that you're struggling, to admit that, it's hard and you need someone on the outside of you to help you. There's nothing wrong with that.
Actually, the people that are the most successful in the world all have help. So remember that too. Everyone I know that's doing really well has a team. A coach, a therapist, a somatic therapist, a grief counselor, a yoga teacher, this, a that, a Pilates, a this, mentors, supervisors. Yeah. Everyone I know has like 3 people. They have a team.
Yes, a team.
I want to be able to afford a team. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've done posts about this before as well. Have a support team. Just because like one person isn't going to be that for every part of your life. You need people in all different professions to be able to support you through all different aspects. Have a support team. And if you can't afford professionals, figure out a way for yourself that can provide you that safety net, that can give you that support. But know that you can reach out and have that support team. Have multiple different professionals around you supporting you through this, helping you navigate it.
Absolutely. I love it.
Love it. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jordana, for being a part of the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing _PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.